Next section deals with blood cells. You can ask me that later. Red blood cells are the first ones that we're going to look at. Scientific term, erythrocyte, so that you should know. Erythrocyte is a red blood cell. Biconcave deals with the shape. Sometimes they're called donut shaped because they're kind of a little bit flattened in the center. They contain 1/3 of the oxygen carrying hemoglobin. So hemoglobin on your red blood cells are very important. When oxygen combines with that hemoglobin, bright red oxyhemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin has oxygen on it, and that gives it the bright red color. Deoxygenated blood is called deoxyhemoglobin. So when you look at pictures, arteries are red, veins are blue. Arteries are oxygen-carrying vessels. They will have that bright red color. In reality, your veins are not blue. They look blue because your skin kind of decolors it a little bit. The blood that doesn't carry oxygen is a darker reddish purple. It's not as bright red as the blood in an artery, but it's also not blue. Red blood cells outgrow or discard their nuclei during development, so red blood cells do not reproduce. They are non-reproducing cells. They can't produce proteins either because they do not have DNA. So if I want to do a DNA test of somebody, I have to have a blood sample, not just red blood cells. Because if they only looked at the red blood cells, they very likely would not be able to find your DNA because the nucleus has disappeared as it has gotten older. Red blood cells do produce ATP for oxygen, so they go through glycolysis, and they can't go on to cellular respiration because they also don't have any mitochondria. So adult red blood cells, they don't have a nucleus, they don't have a mitochondria, they are fairly blank cells. So here's a picture, here's a very enhanced microscopic picture. You can see how they're indented. That's the biconcave picture or diagram. So you can see how the donut shape does make sense. There's not a hole in the middle of your red blood cells, but they're a lot thinner in the middle than they are on the outside. Blood cell counts. Typical red blood cell count is 4,700,000 to 6,100,000. There's an extra zero that shouldn't be there. Per millimeter cubed. So your blood is full of these red blood cells. They are tiny, tiny, tiny. Do notice our females are going to be a little bit smaller, 4.2 million to 5.4 million. Men typically have more iron, they have more muscle mass, and they produce more red blood cells than a female does. The number of red blood cells are important because they determine how much oxygen your blood can carry. So if for some reason you are low on red blood cells, your oxygen carrying capacity will also be lower. So red blood cells can't reproduce. Where do they come from? In the embryo, so before you're born, in the embryo and fetus, red blood cell production called erythropoiesis, that means to produce red blood cells, occurs in the yolk sac when it's an embryo, and then the liver and spleen as it becomes a fetus. After birth, it begins to occur in your red bone marrow. And even as adults, most of your red blood cells are going to come from your red bone marrow. In the ends of your bones, for the most part. Average lifespan of a red blood cell is 120 days, so about 3 to 4 months is kind of the average that they say. Stages of red blood cell formation, they go through different steps. They come from hematopoietic stem cells, also called hemocytoblasts. Hemo deals with blood, so hematocrit, hemoglobin. Hemo deals with blood, cyto is cell, blast means to build, so building blood cells. And then we'll look at the figure that kind of shows those stages and how that occurs. And this one just shows red blood cells and white blood cells. Red blood cell production, total number of red blood cells are pretty constant. It's going to fluctuate obviously a little bit because of so many of them. But here again, it's a negative feedback system. Erythropoietin is the hormone that signals how many red blood cells are there, if more need to be produced or not. And this hormone, erythropoietin, is released from your kidneys and your liver for the most part. And it detects oxygen levels. So it doesn't actually measure red blood cells, it measures oxygen levels. An excessive increase in red blood cells, for some reason, is called polymanycythemia, so many cells in the blood, and it causes very slow-moving blood. So if for some reason, a mutation, shock, something, an excessive increase in red blood cells is obviously going to slow your blood down because it's going to have more cells in it. So oxygen levels detected. Kidney and liver are the two main organs that detect this. Erythropoietin is produced. That hormone is going to tell my red bone marrow, especially up in here, I need more red blood cells, and that's going to increase my levels of oxygen. Dietary factors. Just last week we had a blood drive, and there were many people, including myself, that did not fit this criteria. Iron is important for hemoglobin synthesis, to make hemoglobin. Most of the iron comes from the recycling of old red blood cells. Females, more often than males, have issues with having a high enough iron count. So in order to give blood, and it depends on your age and weight, but around 12.3, 12.5 is the measurement needed to donate blood. Not to be healthy, but to give extra blood, you need to have a certain amount of iron in your blood. Vitamins B12 and folic acid are important because they are needed to create DNA for all of your body cells, especially in your red bone marrow, where red blood cells are going to be produced. And then a deficiency in red blood cells or quantity of hemoglobin is called anemia or anemic, if you've heard somebody being anemic. And often these two things will kind of coincide. If someone is anemic, they're probably also going to have a low iron, and vice versa. They affect each other very easily. So, red blood cells don't live very long. What happens to them when the body's done using them? As the red blood cells age, they get fragile. They're not going to work as well. They are damaged very easily, so we want to get rid of them. We don't want them in the bloodstream. Macrophages, large cells in the liver and spleen, phagocytize, they basically eat, cell eating. They get rid of damaged red blood cells. So liver and spleen are the two main organs that destroy or get rid of your old red blood cells. The hemoglobin then that was on these red blood cells is converted, it's basically broken down and broken apart, and it's broken into heme and globin, which are two separate things. Heme then is broken into iron, which can be stored, or it can be converted into biliverdin and bilirubin, and both of those are excreted in bile. Both of those are in your liver. broken down in your liver, and then they can go to your gallbladder. Here, if you know, a lot of times like young babies will not be able to break those down very easily. And sometimes the babies will have kind of an orangish color to them, and that's because their body's not breaking it down efficiently yet. Very common, usually after a few days, the baby, it starts to work, and there's not issues with it, but that's fairly common. The globin part then is broken into amino acids, and those amino acids can be reused. Diagram. I'm not going to go through all of it. Here you can see the liver is very important. B12 is going to be used in nutrients. This wouldn't be a bad thing to read through at some point in time, as it does list the stages of the red blood cell.